These guidelines will help prevent us hating each other. It will help prevent factionalism and division and tribalism. We need to move away from those things. One of these guidelines that the Prophet ﷺ gave us to strengthen our relations is do not cut your relations with people. The Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith, no one should remain separated from his brother for more than, how long? 3 days. That is one specific guideline that the Prophet ﷺ taught us. But how many of us follow that sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ? How many of us implement that guideline? We have an argument with a brother, we have a big verbal spat with him, we cut our relationship and we don't talk to him for a long time. When we see the brother, we ignore him. Yeah. Anybody. Now the brother that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned here specifically, your brother in Islam. Why did the Prophet ﷺ set the limit of 3 days? Why was the limit set at 3 days? Because it takes, on average, 3 days for someone's anger to subside, to be reduced. That's why the Prophet ﷺ specifically chose 3 days. That after 3 days you need to then begin to make efforts to reconcile the differences that you had. And that's the next step that the Prophet ﷺ said. After 3 days, reconciliation becomes the highest priority. And this is where we tend to ignore things. We just leave them. We sweep the problem under the carpet and we hope that it will go away, but it won't. You have to make an effort to rectify that situation. And it takes a very big man to admit that he made a mistake or that he was wrong. How many of us are willing to admit our mistakes? How many? How many people are willing to say that they are sorry? Not many. Not many people. In another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, it is not permissible for a believer to remain isolated from another believer for more than 3 days. If they meet after 3 days, the one should greet the other. If he returned the greeting, both of them will be rewarded. But if he did not, then the sin will be on him, and the other will be free from the sin of separation. To refuse to accept another person's request for pardon, for forgiveness, is a greater sin. The Prophet ﷺ said, if a person turns down the request of another for forgiveness, on him will be the same sin as the tax collector who demands tax which is not due. So it is a big sin if a brother comes to you to ask forgiveness from you for something that he did. He may have hurt you. He may have done something to harm you. But he comes to ask forgiveness for what he did. And you, in your stubbornness, in your thick-headedness, you find some people like this. They cannot forgive. The Prophet ﷺ said, on that person will be a big sin for not forgiving the person who is asking for forgiveness. The next thing that I mentioned that the Hasad, the one who is jealous, does after cutting his relations easily, he moves to backbiting. We know that Islam does not allow a Muslim to expose another person's faults, even though that person may have that fault. And it is through the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He covers our faults. And we forget this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala covers our mistakes, hides it from people, but what do? We go and expose other people's faults. The Prophet ﷺ said, whoever came to know something bad about his brother, and he concealed it, he hid it, he covered it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will cover his faults on Yawm al-Qiyamah, on the Day of Judgment. The reckoning on Yawm al-Qiyamah is going to be so severe. The worst thing that anybody would want to have happen to him on that day is to have his reckoning done in front of everyone. For everyone to see his mistakes and his faults. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us a chance by covering the mistakes of your brother. What we tend to do today is the opposite. We jump to expose another brother's faults. And we always look for the negatives rather than focus on the positives of a brother. Hide your brother's faults. Conceal them. Backbiting is haram. It is unlawful. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu reported that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, he asked his companions one day, do you know what backbiting is? See, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he taught, he taught us the method of teaching as well. And one of the methods is to ask a question to verify whether students have understood what the lesson was about. And in this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ teaches us that. He asked his companions, do you know what backbiting is? So they replied, Allah and His Messenger know best. He said, backbiting means that you say about your brother that which he does not like. So they asked the Prophet ﷺ, but what if I find in him what I said about him? The Prophet ﷺ then replied, if he has the fault that you revealed, it is backbiting. But if he does not have what you revealed, then it is even worse, because then it is slander. Now, to clarify this topic, what is not hasad? Competing for righteous deeds. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَفِي ذَلِكَ فَلْيَتَنَافَسِ الْمُتَنَافِسُونَ. And for this, let those who want to strive, let them compete in this. To compete for righteous deeds. And these were the companions. They used to compete with each other to do righteous deeds. But that was not hasad. That was the good form of envy. It was not the destructive jealousy. For example, if you look at Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu and Abu Bakr, they used to compete with each other to do righteous deeds. But they did not compete destructively. Not like we compete today when we're playing sports. Any sports, you compete to get the other person out of the race or out of the game, injured severely enough so that the brother cannot play. That's not the Islamic way of competing. They used to compete with each other to encourage each other, to outdo each other in righteous deeds. And we know the incident that when the Prophet ﷺ in one of the campaigns asked the companions to come and donate their money. Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anh came with half of his wealth, and the Prophet ﷺ asked him, what did you leave for your family? He said, I left the like of this. So half of this. Half of what I have here, half is for my family. Then Abu Bakr radiallahu anh came, and the Prophet ﷺ recognized that he brought all his wealth. So the Prophet ﷺ asked him, what did you leave for your family? He said, I left for them Allah and His Messenger ﷺ. So Umar said, after this day, there is no way that I will be able to beat Abu Bakr. So he realized he was beaten. But that did not stop them competing for good deeds. And this is what we need to do. We need to compete with each other to do good deeds. But you do not want your brother to lose his good deeds. The Prophet ﷺ then explained to us, لا حسد إلا في اثنين رجل آتاه الله مالا فسلطه على هلكته في الحق ورجل آتاه الله الحكمة فهو يقضي بها ويعلمها. The Prophet ﷺ said there is no envy, no jealousy except with respect to two. A person to whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given wealth and he uses it for truth, and another person for whom Allah has given wisdom and he judges by it and teaches it. So there's an Arabic word for this form. It's called ghibta. This is an Arabic word that means to wish that you have the blessing that another person has, without that person, without wishing that he is deprived of it. So you see a brother, mashallah, he reads the Quran well. So you say to yourself, I'm envious of that brother. I would love to read like him. So he becomes a role model for you. Or you see another brother, you see him working hard in the da'wah, sacrificing his time. He's always there when the work needs to be done. So you look at that brother and you say, mashallah, I love that brother and the way he works. I envy him, I'd like to be like him. That is ghibta.